Hi, this is Cora Stack again. Excuse me, Dr. Cora Stack. I just wanted to the big question that a lot of people are asking, and we really don't have any answers, and we just want to put it out here. If anybody can enlighten us, we would be delighted to find out the answer to this question. But let me frame it because it's a recurring question which nobody really knows the answer to. But I think it's a kind of a critical line of inquiry which would be very helpful. So the key unanswered question in Ireland's 2025 presidential nomination process. What happened in Ireland's 2025 presidential nomination process matters not to the politicians but to the public. I mean, this is why we're so we're so concerned. The implications for the Irish democracy, which is the every single person in this country, not an elite group. I don't mean that in any pejorative sense, but it's the democracy, and each of us forms part of that democracy. For the first time since 1937, a constitutional route designed specifically to allow non-party candidates, in other words, you, your family, your brother, your sister, your daughter, or future relatives, etc., onto the presidential ballot did not function in practice. This video asks a simple question: why? Now, I certainly don't have the answers, because at the time I ask, no, everyone has a different, everyone seems to have a different answer. So, under the Constitution, the president is elected by the people. That's Article 12. We'll go back to my favourite article again, but for this particular debate. Article 12 deliberately provides two nomination routes so that presidential elections are not controlled solely by political parties. This is the key issue. I think it's a very good example, really, of what people have been saying. That we're living in a kind of a dictatorship and all of this. I think this presidential is a very good it's very good to put the spotlight on it for how it has kind of gone to the limits, if you like, and we need a democratic reset. One of these routes, nomination by local authorities, exists to ensure that independents and non-party candidates can reach the ballot where there is sufficient public support. In theory, anyone in practice, any Irish citizen, is entitled to seek nomination through this process, and they don't have to be politically aligned, or they don't necessarily have to be multimillionaires or in an elite circle. And that's the foundation of our democracy, that we're all equal. But that's not felt by a lot of people at the moment who feel disenfranchised. They're morally injured, as I put it in a previous video, in many senses, because of what they cannot afford now compared to previously, and they do their best, and they're finding they're very hard pressed to meet their basic bills, even on working 9 to 5, or longer in some cases, in many cases. What actually happened? The undisputed facts. In 2025, what happened? No independent candidate secured 20 Oireachtas nominations. And more importantly, from my point of view, our point of view, no independent candidate secured nominations from 4 local authorities, that's the city and county council authorities. There's 31 of those altogether. This meant that the local authority route, a constitutional mechanism, failed entirely in practice. That had never happened before. The directive, or the action, publicly reported in advance of local authority meetings. National media reported that Fine Gael issued a nationwide instruction to its councillors not to nominate any independent presidential candidate. This was not legislation. It was not a ministerial order. It was a party action or directive applied uniformly across councils. Why this is not a technical issue: local councillors are not private actors. When they meet to consider presidential nominations, they are exercising a statutory public function within a constitutional process. They are required by law to act independently. These are the SIPU standards, Standard in Public Office. If you just look up those, you'll see what are they duty bound required to do under their role as county councillors. They're required by law through these SIPO standards to act independently, impartially, and in the public interest. This is not controversial. This is the legal framework. The effect on the public. The effect of the coordinate refusal to nominate was that ordinary citizens were denied a genuine choice at the ballot box. No referendum was held, no legislation was passed, no constitutional amendment was proposed. Now there has been talk of doing this going forward, but not before this happened. So a constitutional pathway simply ceased to operate. The silence, this is a fact. Since then, something else has happened, or rather not happened. There has been remarkably little sustained scrutiny of why this was done. The question of constitutional necessity has not been publicly answered. The media moved on. The public was left with the outcome, but without an explanation. And this is, this is why I'm here. And I haven't. I'm still trying to, figure it all out. The resulting public perception, when a constitutional mechanism is neutralised without explanation or adequate scrutiny, silence itself creates an alternative public reality. It's like gaslighting, the public, distorting their reality. It never happened, kind of thing, because nobody's talking about it. It never happened. It did happen, and we're not going to let this continue. This sort of creating an alternative public reality. We are duty bound as citizens to accept that this is not right, and that it is eroding democracy in plain sight. In that reality, power appears unaccountable, constitutional design appears optional, and ordinary citizens are expected to accept outcomes they were never consulted on. That perception, whether intended or not, damages trust. The election result. The presidency was ultimately won by a sitting member of the Oireachtas from the opposition. The directive did not prevent an outsider from winning. It did, however, ensure that only institutional insiders appeared on the ballot. The question that has still not been answered. So the key answered question remains: why was a nationwide party directive considered necessary in a constitutional process that already contained strict eligibility thresholds? What constitutional problem was it solving? This is not a legal technicality. It goes to whether constitutional safeguards designed for the public can be overridden by coordination and silence. If there is a clear lawful and constitutional justification for what happened, the public is entitled to hear it. Until then, this question does not go away. So this is the point here, that there appears to be a remarkable degree of silence around all of this, as if it never happened. The directive never happened, and it wasn't important one way or the other. Sorry, it's a major issue. It's a huge, huge issue. And, accepting the narrative that it kind of never happened. Silence means it goes away. The media are not talking about it. Now, I don't understand. I think the media have a duty to discuss this very, very serious case, that's now at appeals and so on. And, that they have a duty to tell the truth to the public. And I don't know what's stopping them. The media are supposed to be, we're paying, we buy the newspapers, we pay our TV license, we expect the truth from the media. We do not expect silence, which it appears like some kind of alleged collusion in some way. I'm very disappointed with the media, because there's a lot of media commentators who are absolutely excellent and who must know, down in their conscience, that what went wrong here. They must agree with this, and whether they're constrained by fear or legal or something else, we don't know. It's impossible to answer. But they really have let the public down, in my opinion, the media here, because I had huge trust in the media. Up to now, I had huge trust in the media, because there are some fantastic, reporters in Ireland, and by and large they do a fantastic job. But in this particular case, they have let the public down hugely, because they're the bridge really to the truth, the media, and even some of what are called the controlled opposition, very big people are staying silent, and in doing so, they are all contributing, in my opinion, to the silence is contributing to the quiet erosion of democracy. And if this isn't halted and stopped, it's not going to get any better. So I'm not blaming the media, because I don't know why there's such media silence. There's some. I mean, this is a major issue in Irish history, political history. It's not minor. I mean, I wouldn't be wasting my time here if this wasn't major. And yet, there's no word out of the mainstream media, or indeed the mainstream controlled, inverted commas, opposition. And it's very disappointing. Now, there has to be consequences for them, perhaps financially or otherwise. And I mean, that's very unfortunate, because if they all spoke with one voice, there wouldn't be any consequences. So I think one person maybe alone might find, but if they all came out and spoke with one voice, it might be helpful. But there's just a sense there's kind of alleged collusion here, which to me is very disappointing when it involves the media, because you hear about the media in other countries being controlled by the government, but we would like to think our media in Ireland was a bit stronger than that. But I don't know. I can't say. I'm only asking questions. I mean, but this is major. This is a major point in Irish political history that is being kind of silenced or neutralised by silence, and we are not accepting this, and we are bringing it to the Court of Appeals, and we are not accepting the judgment of the High Court that this was truthful. And then what happens if this is accepted? This becomes truth, and so anyone can override the Constitution going forward. Anyone can issue these directives and to do what they like, allegedly, so we have to challenge it. And we believe, moreover, that we have the truth on our side. But what we don't have is the voice through the media on our side, which we're very disappointed in. But that's another question. Why have the media done this blanket silence almost on this case? That's another question we could ask. But I can't answer these questions, because I'm not an insider. I'm not a media insider, and I'm not a government insider. But I certainly know that this is a major question. It's a huge election for the truth. And the truth, hopefully, will eventually come out. And we cannot accept, a court judgment which we believe was fundamentally flawed as going into the history books as the truth. That is manipulating and distortion, allegedly. We can't accept it, which is why we're challenging it, because legally, constitutionally, every way you look at it, it makes no sense. And yet it would be a brilliant story for the papers, brilliant, or any of them, but they're just silent. So it's beyond beggars belief that this is happening, and it's very hard then to stand up and say, no, this is incorrect. It was a flawed judgment. There may have been undue influence, we don't know. It may have been politically unexpedient or difficult, but then you see, once we make a decision and you maybe have been politically under political pressure, it gets harder then to you have to stick with that, and that becomes kind of into the legislature as the law. No, it isn't the law. It is an opinion at a very difficult time. Perhaps the person or the judiciary were under enormous pressure. Perhaps there was conflict of interest. Perhaps there was third parties behind the scene influencing these judgments. Again, political pressure, but that should not have influenced. Judges have a duty under the separation of powers to protect the public under the Constitution, and we feel this was not done by the High Court. They did not, in my opinion, protect the people under their statutory obligations under the separation of powers. They aligned with the government in a way that I feel has really let down the public, and furthermore, the media in the same vein have really let down the public and the Irish citizen. It kind of shows contempt for the ordinary people, allegedly, which I think, well, we're standing up for the ordinary people in this, because we think this is a very, very important election and an opportunity for a democratic reset, which is very, very badly needed. Thank you.